Too much joy. So today on the Wonder Life podcast, we have our dear friend, Dr. Nicole Krakora, and she has a hyphen, Huffman, but we're just not sure how to use it yet. So you guys decide. She'll be called whatever works. Welcome to the show, my dear.
Thank you so much for having me.
Let's first just say Dr. Nicole is really very well versed in women's health issues and many other things. This podcast today is really to talk about, body fat in general. So it's not necessarily all about women because men have hormones too.
They sure do. Absolutely.
Why don't we talk about that? Why isn't that as like big of an issue of like, oh, he's on his period.
Right.
That's
he's
why he's
hormonally imbalanced. I mean, the bottom line is that so what's interesting is this whole method, this like figuring out what your body fat is saying about you, right? Like why you're storing fat in certain areas tells you a lot about your health hormonally. It was developed by Charles Poliquin, and he actually developed it on men. So it actually started on men, which I think is really fascinating, and we use it on everybody. But men, generally speaking, a lot of them are hormonally imbalanced. Lower testosterone, too high of estrogen stores. And it's not talked about because I think like men just you don't think about like hormonally imbalanced men, but they're everywhere,
Like completely and potentially like running our planet.
Yeah.
I mean, and not just in America.
Right.
But like, right?
Yeah.
So I like our preface though, because when you're talking about body fat storage and what it means and maybe how it can create some imbalances, this is for women and it's for men. So everybody get ready. Sister's about to tell us what's up.
Right. Where do we want to start? I mean, I think the basis is just to understand that we might not like love our body fat, although there is like a huge movement towards that, which I think is amazing. But we have to understand that like our body fat at its very basis is a storage system. It's a storage system for emotions. It's a storage system for excess hormone, for toxicities, for chronic infection. It's keeping us safe. So really, when we look at our like legs and we see cellulite that maybe we don't love, we sort of should be thanking our bodies and saying like, hey, thank you for creating the storage system so that we don't have all of this homes. We store things in certain places in our house for certain reasons. And our body does the exact same thing. So it has very specific places it likes to store things in order to keep us safe. And so that's kind of what we're chatting about.
I think that is fascinating because societally we've been trained that, fat, at least the American society, is that, we don't want to be fat. We don't want to have too much of it, that it, being diabetic obviously is a big problem, or people who are obese, like there are so many more risks involved when we have too much body fat.
Right.
If you look at, and here again, like, let me just be real honest. I'm not a historian by any means, but like in the Indian culture or some other cultures, like the more fat you have on your body, the wealthier you are, and like the higher, upper echelon that you are. So that's actually a symbol of status. So it's a very interesting mental piece around fat. But in this country, we are not overly interested in fat as, some other folks are. And there is a movement. I mean, God bless Lizzo. I mean, she is on her cover of her album and she is like, I mean, if you ain't got the juice, then, you're in trouble. Like, so she's really put that out there. Kim Kardashian,
Totally.
Whether real or not, stunningly beautiful woman with the biggest booty on the planet. And, so then there's that movement around fat, but more to the point around health and hormones. What's a good balance? Like how much fat is good for storage, or like, where do we teeter into obesity? Like I am a larger boned person. I'm only 5'5". I feel good about my body. I weigh 170 pounds and sometimes 175 pounds. That on the scale with, traditional medicine is like, girl, you're obese. And I'm not buying that ball of BS.
Right.
So what's the real?
Well, and that's the thing I think is so fascinating. And part of why this particular technique is called biosignature modulation, super long, when he developed it. And essentially it was for athletes or it was for people who wanted to be leaner for whatever reason, mostly athletic performance. But then it's sort of, the more people that started using it, they started using it for anybody who wanted to achieve optimal levels of health. So there's no right or wrong of like, too much fat is bad. Like, it's really about your health goals and how you feel, right? So if you're someone who's like, yeah, I don't feel that great, then it's like, cool, we can use the way that your body stores fat as a tool to find out how we can better hormonally balance your body. But if you're someone who has more body fat and feels great, then like, I don't know that it's of interest, right? So I think it really just depends on like every individual's goals. If you're a female who doesn't have a period, or who has like major menstrual issues, like we might want to balance out your hormones, which is probably also going to change the way your body looks, right? But I also feel like, it just really depends on your goals and how you feel, I think, is what it comes down to.
So you were saying earlier that various parts of your body are associated with maybe different balances or imbalances if you find in your body. So we were talking about this glorious arm fat.
Right.
Which, and I can't actually act like I've been lifting little weights to try to work it out because I haven't. And, and it's actually pretty easy if you do some exercises, it's pretty easy to build that muscle back there. But what you said that was so interesting was that can be associated with your thyroid. And I have Hashimoto's. I mean, and I'm not hanging down to my toes, but it's definitely like a party down there.
Right.
So, what other things are like the arm, your tricep flab, what else could that be associated with?
Right. So that can also be associated with testosterone stores. And so if our testosterone is lower, we can accumulate more fat on your tricep. And what's interesting is you can work out that muscle and the muscle can grow, but that doesn't necessarily, mean that the fat there is going to go any lower, right? Because that is associated with something else. And by working out your tricep muscles, you're not necessarily strengthening your thyroid. You could be upping your testosterone levels, but most of the time that's not a big enough muscle group that's really going to boost that hormone up a lot where we'll see a difference. And so we can just look at that like, okay, why isn't this person's testosterone levels optimal? Are they drinking too much alcohol? That lowers testosterone a lot.
Oh, I did not know that. That's fascinating.
It does. And so does low zinc, because if we have too low of zinc stores, then any testosterone we're creating, we're likely moving all into estrogen, which stores in other parts of our body that aren't always the most flattering. And so it's not just about like, oh, I have low thyroid medication. Oh, I have low testosterone, give you testosterone. Like there's ways you can optimize it within the body in order to optimize those hormones too.
So you don't necessarily have to take a hormone. There's other things you could do. Will food change that or no?
I've seen different, like green tea for some people can really optimize testosterone levels. I'm going to say that anything that like wheat, for instance, like and yeast and hops that are in beer, those all can lower testosterone in some people. So yeah, you can optimize it with food, but it really depends on where you're at, right? Like there are a lot of women where we do put them on a little bit of thyroid hormone just to get them over that hump while we're working on some other things. But I would say in both testosterone and thyroid, there's just other options we like to try first. And you can kind of see it change on your body, which is pretty cool.
Well, I love that because I would love to see a change in that and my ability to fly to another continent. What about the notorious gut, the belly fat?
Yeah.
I mean, that,
So
like, Lord knows, like, I feel like I can deal with the arms. I'd love to, like, once and for all, just get rid of this gut fat. And here's the interesting thing is that, like, my weight will fluctuate, or, you know, I might lose weight or gain weight or whatever, and I have it pretty well controlled. But what I notice is that, like, I like, it's not like I'm gonna go, like, my stomach's never been flat. I mean, it never has been. And you know, I have been way heavier in my life. And then when I was 27, I decided to change the way I ate and work out. And so I lost 30 pounds. So I've been able to, like, keep that off
that's
most of these
awesome.
years.
Yeah.
Um, However, even though it changed because I lost that fat, my body shape is my body shape. But, like, the gut stuff, I mean, it's still there, and it's in, you know, so it's like, I don't know how to work that piece out. And I think that that's, like, a big area for a lot of people.
It is for sure. So if we went right next to the belly button, that fat so whenever we took readings to kind of measure ratios or just to do a reading of body fat to see if it changed when we were tracking it and train, different supplements or workout patterns or foods or whatever, we could see changes in the body fat readings. And so right next to your belly button is where we would do the cortisol reading, the umbilical reading, which directly relates to cortisol and insulin. And now cortisol is our stress hormone, right? And so, there's a lot of different types of stress. So there's emotional stress, of course, right? So if you're somebody who's, like, running from thing to thing, you're constantly overworked, you're not sleeping that well, we're probably going to see a spike in cortisol, which is going to translate to increased belly fat. But there's all these other types of stress. There's chemical stress. Are we exposed to some sort of chemical, which is, like, everywhere in our environment, that's causing stress in the body, that's making the belly fat, reading go up? There's electromagnetic stress from our cell phones and our computers and our Wi-Fi and all those things. There's food stress. So are you eating things that are stressing out your body? Gluten, dairy, sugar, corn, soy, like, those are just a couple of them. But for some people, it's food sensitivities. Like, they're sensitive to lettuce, and, like, that could be stressing their body out. But it definitely can be unresolved emotions. And it can be, I have seen, like, the upper belly fat, almost like above the belly button. I've seen that too related to when people have IBS. So it's like they might have, like, a chronic infection, like a SIBO thing or too much candida, fungus, bacteria. And so the digestive stress on, like, the small intestine and the colon then creates body fat there. So I think that's why so many people struggle with it, is it's not just like a one-way street, right? Like, cortisol has so many different, it's the result of so many different things that could be going on in our system.
Oh my God, that is huge. Like, and I am not sitting here trying to, like, have all that stuff, but I was like, okay, that's, like, a huge piece of information. I think that's really, that really is something that a lot of people have. I mean, to a degree, everyone has candida, but, like, it could go too far. I mean, I would say that, like, what do you think that the number is? Let me not be the doctor that makes stuff up, because I'm not. What do you think that, like, the percentage of people who are experiencing that, like, even if you don't have that excess belly fat in that spot, you could still have SIBO or IBS or whatever,
some sort
or
of candida,
not, right?
I would say, like, I don't know what a percentage I would give, but there are definitely some colleagues of mine that venture to say that almost everybody deals with some sort of fungal issue, and that it's, like, a major, that it's just rampant, and it causes so many different types of symptoms, whether it's, like, foggy head, like brain fog type symptoms, if it's, like, digestive systems, if it's cravings, like, some people who have candida just crave sugar and alcohol all the time, and they feel like, oh yeah, I have terrible willpower, and it's like, no, you just have, like, a massive fungal infection, right? I mean, so I'd say there's a lot. I'm going to just talk about one other reading that ties into that. And it's our lovely love handle reading. And so it's like right above your iliac crest there, that bone on the side. And then there's like a natural fold that's right there. And that we look at as insulin. So when when we were working with a lot of athletes, we'd call it like the cheat meter. So like someone would be like, oh yeah, I've been eating right on, haven't been like, cheating at all. And these are people who, whatever your personal thoughts on cheating and diet and all of that stuff are fine. But these are people who are trying to achieve a certain body fat for athletic performance reasons or for other reasons. And if that reading went up, you would actually be able to tell that they had veered and they had caused too much insulin or too many sugar spikes in their body. And insulin and cortisol, they like to compete with each other. So if you're eating, let's say, I'm just going to say too many carbs or too many foods that are keeping your insulin too high and your blood sugar isn't stable, your cortisol is going to want to go up with it. So it's like they kind of just go up with each other. So then that's also going to infect your umbilical reading, that one right next to your belly button. And so it's just interesting how these hormones can also kind of like play off of each other. And other things can raise insulin aside from just food, right? Like it can also be like a stress or your body reacting to something. But I just think for those people who are like, I eat so clean and I still can't seem to lose any weight around my abdomen. And maybe they're doing it more for health reasons, right? Because abdominal fat can be dangerous if it's like going around your organs and stuff like that. It might not be food then, right? Then it's like these other types of stress we need to look at, like chronic infections, like emotional stuff that hasn't been resolved.
So you do testing. So I guess this would be like a really good question, which is how do we know? So how do you find out?
How do we know? Right. So I like muscle testing, which we kind of chatted about a little bit on our little preview thing. I think muscle testing is cool because we can have you like quite literally hold an area of body fat and we can test to see what's going on there, right? So there's that piece of it. Our bodies are electrical beings. So if we're able to use a strong muscle to use strong and weak, so we can find out some pretty cool information. When it comes to chronic infections, I like to use muscle testing because it's like part of your appointment. It doesn't cost hundreds and hundreds of dollars. But I also do love specialty testing because some people really like to see the down and dirty numbers. They want to see what bug it is. And then we can absolutely do any sort of chronic infection specialty lab testing as well. And sometimes just your labs, your plain, like the labs that people go and get drawn at their yearly physicals. I like to read between the lines. So oftentimes a doctor will look at them and be like, nothing's red, everything's good. But we actually, as naturopathic doctors, like to read between these reference ranges, and we can get a lot of information out of that as to what else is going on with the body.
This is so fascinating, which is why we love functional medicine. This is why I'm obsessed, because I was like, I want to get to the root cause of all this stuff. And if I do, like, I'm just a regular human, I'm assuming other people do. And so this is what really led me into this love affair that I have with functional medicine and being obsessed with all of you who know about it, because that root cause piece is huge. And it's also not magic, like you said. So it's like, you have to do the muscle testing. You likely have to do some sort of blood testing or stool testing or whatever. Like it's digging layers deep. So it's not magic. Like you still have to go on a journey with it and be patient with it. It's your body. And, if you're in your 40s, like I am, like I've had a whole life. So it's like, okay, well, if it's not the food or if it's not, stress, which let's be frigging real. Like I don't have these wrinkles on my face because, and some of them are from joy, but like,
right.
We're on the planet. We're stressed out. We're in an interesting state of affairs. But it's like being patient with the process. It's not a quick fix and it's not a pharmaceutical all the time. And then sometimes you guys do have to use pharmaceutical for like stuff. And so I think that that's what people, should really understand with this journey with any health journey, with any sort of doctor. Like, it's not cut and dry, and you need to be invested to find out like what's happening. I know you have to go because you are a busy woman. So let's hit a couple more spots on the body.
Yeah.
But let's do booty fat, and then like that beautiful cellulite on my thighs.
So there isn't actually like a butt reading, I think, because like he just never decided like, let's just pinch the spot on the butt, because it's like every site is so specific. You have to pinch 2,000 people before you were certified. It was crazy.
Oh my God. That's a lot of pinching.
Is a lot of pinching. But we can do, so the hamstring reading, so the back of the thigh, we can look at as like your progesterone estrogen balance. So if we have too high of estrogen in relation to progesterone, that's a pretty big imbalance. So we can store estrogen usually in our legs and in our hips. Now, estrogen is like this amazing hormone. We need it. It does so many great things, but there's toxic forms of estrogen, and we can get crappy forms of estrogen all the time from our environment, plastics being just one example of that. And if we don't do specific ways of detoxing, our body's just like, yep, we're storing that excess estrogen right in the legs.
Can you talk about that a little bit more as far as plastics? Because I hear that a lot, but like, what does that mean? Is that, a water bottle that's off-gassing the plastic? Or if I, like what does that entail? Because I think that a lot of people don't really realize that plastic is like white sugar. It's the devil.
It's bad. I mean, so there's just these different compounds in plastic that act like estrogen in the body, right? And so plastics can be literally anything plastic. It becomes really bad when it's like a plastic water bottle that has heated up because you left it in the car and then you drink from it. And it's like heated up plastic and it leached into the water and you're drinking it. Or people who like microwave their leftovers in plastic containers, like you're basically just leaching that plastic into your food. But there is more research coming out that even like plastic that hasn't really been altered temperature wise can still leach things into your food, like using a lot of Ziploc bags, or I think just drinking from plastic is the worst. I mean, so just trying to use like different stainless steel water bottles, or, even a big one is like to-go coffee cups, which is kind of a bummer since you can't really bring your own coffee cup into places right now. But if you think about it, those cups are made from paper. Paper does not hold water. It just doesn't, or liquid. So there has to be a liner and some chemicals that are in that. And then they put a plastic lid right on top of your hot thing and you drink from it. It's like the worst, right? I mean, that's like, just give me all those lovely BPA chemicals. And even when things say BPA free, well, there's a BPF, there's a BPH, there's a BP. I mean, it's like, you're not really avoiding
plastic.
it. Yeah.
Well, I mean, and not to mention like it's killing the ocean. It's like when they're, and I'm totally making this up. So by the way, this is my intuition, but like we recycle plastic, then they have to burn the plastic or melt the plastic to make other plastic. So even though we are so grateful to those companies who are like, hey, this is plastic that was from 5,000 years ago.
Right.
That plastic is still off-gassing into
the environment.
Into the environment. I mean, and God, we
really
can go
quick,
down the friggin' hole with this.
Well, I wanted to just like come full circle back to men who are hormonally imbalanced. Men should not have high estrogen levels. And when they do, they store fat in places, and then that lowers their testosterone. And so why are men having all of these high estrogen levels that they shouldn't have? One of the big reasons is like plastics and things in the environment that are acting like estrogen in the body. So, and you can measure that in men too, which is crazy.
Oh my God. We have so much more to talk about. Like,
we'll need a part two.
We definitely need a part two, and talking about toxicity. from environmental stuff and just like things that people, not to scare people, but like just to reaffirm, you know, some pieces and help people with some more awareness. I mean, a big thing, I mean, I love the human body. I love the spirit and the soul. The Mother Earth is like so precious, and we take her for granted. And even like we're about to buy a new car, according to my husband, not this second, according to me, sooner than he thinks. And he wants to buy a truck, and like I've agreed to it. I'm like, I just don't feel good about that. I really don't. I don't feel good about buying a truck that has that's 15 miles to a gallon, and it's gonna hurt the environment. Now, do I want to buy what's a Tesla? Kinda. But like that's also a pain in the butt, because who wants to stop every 2 hours to plug the damn thing in? So,
and I'm just saying too, like if you have an electrical car, which is maybe great for the environment, that's a lot of electromagnetic stress that you're sitting in all day long when you're driving around in it.
Damn it! I'm gonna have to get a bike with a motor. I live in Summit County. Can you imagine me like going over the damn road on a electric bike? I mean, seriously. So these are things I'd love to talk about.
Let's do it.
So we just have so much more. Was there any other spot on the body you have to go? You have the patients ready for you. We talked about the belly. We got
here.
arms.
Let's do one more. We'll do. There's a spot behind your back, so like right underneath your shoulder blade.
I got that too.
And that oftentimes, so the people who you've seen who are like, I can eat whatever carb I want and never put on any weight, they naturally have a really small reading because they genetically can manage their blood sugar really well. If that reading is higher, it's just like usually you don't manage your blood sugar quite as well. So you're somebody who tends to usually do lower on like a lower carbohydrate diet, or at least until you're able to manage your insulin. So I always think that's kind of an interesting one too, because we like, you know, we first learn all this stuff and we're like, oh, this person like, you know, eats whatever they want and like, you know, doesn't gain a pound. And it's like, oh, they have a very low reading right there. They just genetically manage their blood sugar and their insulin really well. And you can eat yourself out of that, right? Like you can make yourself insulin resistant, but that's kind of a sign that we look at as like how well you manage your blood sugar and how we can help you to manage it better.
Oh my God, you are so good. Thank you so much. Y'all, this is your new master teacher. She's about to teach y'all so much. I mean, I can't even stand it. I don't even know where we're going to start, but just stay tuned for more from Dr. Nicole K.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
K-H.
Dr. Nicole Krakora-Huffman. It's just too many.